Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Kicker's Journey by Lois Cloarec Hart. Narrated by Landon. Prologue. On an unseasonably hot spring day, 14-year-old Kicker Stuart stopped in front of her destination. Her ragged, ill-fitting clothes were caked with dust, and her feet burned within shabby boots from the remorseless pounding of the last 2 hours. She wiped one grimy sleeve over dry, cracked lips and blinked away drops of sweat. "Should have brung water with me. 'Twas foolish not to." Kicker's discomfort quickly melted into awe as she stared at the stately stone pillars that flanked the entrance to the Grindleshire Academy for young ladies. She had never seen such an imposing entrance, nor felt more keenly the lowly circumstances of her birth. Blessed Jesus! Of it here worse than a mare in a chicken coop. Kicker swallowed hard and peered in concentration at the bronze tablet on one pillar. She could make out the numbers as 1868, but could not read aught else on the sign that marked the founding of the Academy. "'Huh. 'Twas here 10 years before I was e'en born, and I ain't never been by this way before." She allowed herself a moment to muse on the boundaries of her life to date. Kicker had walked only 5 miles from her home village, carrying a small sack with all her worldly possessions slung over her back. Yet the world she was about to enter was as alien to her as a London drawing-room. "I hope you ain't sent me into the lion's den, Adam." Kicker mentally directed the admonition at her older brother, who was responsible for her presence at this gate. She squared her shoulders and passed into the grounds of the finishing school for daughters of families who did not have the status or influence to secure more elite placements. Kicker trudged up the long driveway and gaped at the massive stone building with ostentatious turrets on all corners. "I ne'er seen nothing so grand." The Academy's position on a rise dominated 200 acres of lush green lawns, manicured gardens, cultivated fields, and thickly wooded land alongside a turbulent river. The institution was comprised of academic facilities, student dormitories, teacher and household staff quarters, as well as the Grindleshire family's private suite. The 4 wings of the main structure enclosed a cobblestone courtyard. Behind the edifice, several small cottages for senior employees flanked the vast vegetable gardens that supplied the school's kitchen. Kicker's destination lay to the west side of the Academy, the stable, paddocks, storage and maintenance buildings. It was Saturday, and students wandered the lawns and lingered in the lush gardens. Some of the girls were around her age, yet Kicker felt their differences keenly. Though an oddity even in her village, at least there, her common clothes and scruffy hair did not mark her so blatantly as an outsider. Kicker nodded politely at 2 girls who crossed the driveway, sweeping their elegant dresses far from her path, only to be stung by the disdainful look she received in return. Their giggles trailed after her as Kicker hastily detoured off the long driveway toward the stable. Kicker relaxed as she headed away from the scornful students and toward the familiar environment. "Leastways, I won't have to muck about with their sort. I hope Adam's right about this, though. Gonna be a long, thirsty walk home if he ain't." Her tempered optimism lasted until the moment she came face to face with the stablemaster, who viewed her approach with a scowl. Kicker snatched the cap off her short dark brown hair. "Would you be old Thomas, sir?" "Aye, you're Henry Stuart's girl, Adam's sister." "Aye, sir, I am." Old Thomas looked her up and down. Kicker tried to project strength, but there was only so much he could do about her short stature and wiry body. The stablemaster spat, an eloquent comment on his newest employee. Kicker refused to wither. This was nothing new. Since the age of 7, when her parents reluctantly acknowledged she was useless at traditional female chores, she'd had to prove herself in the male domain. Her father had finally yielded to her pleas and allowed Kicker to join her brothers in his smithy. As the years passed, Kicker had learned the ins and outs of the farrier's trade. Now she was starting anew. But Kicker was confident her skills and industry would win old Thomas over.
"Don't be thinking I'll go easy on you, just 'cause you're a girl. Got that?"
"Aye, sir. I can do a full day's work, no less than my brothers." Old Thomas's scowl became less pronounced.
"So says your da and Adam. They're good men, honest men."
He turned away, but not before Kicker heard his final word on the matter.
"I'll give you a chance, but you said 1 foot wrong and I'll toss you out on your arse. Don't be thinking I won't, girl."
Kicker grinned as she followed the stablemaster into the barn. Old Thomas pointed to a door at the end of the aisle.
"You can throw your gear in there. Then we got work to do."
She hastened past the stalls and didn't slow to examine the horses as she normally would have. Even the exhilarating discovery that she was to have a room entirely to herself did not delay her hurried return to the stablemaster.
"You can begin by mucking out the place."
As Kicker started off, old Thomas called after her.
"How'd you come by such an odd name, anyway?"
Kicker flashed him a smile as she grabbed the pitchfork and set to work. "'Twas Adam, sir. The first time he seen me, he called me a hell of a kicker. Ma said she'd already come up with 13 names, and Kicker would have to do for me. Said she was too tired to think up another one." Old Thomas chuckled, then shot her a stern look.
"Don't be calling me sir, girl. I ain't one of 'em up at the academy. I work for my daily bread."
"Aye." Kicker fell into a comfortably familiar rhythm with the fork. "As do I." Chapter 1. Fall leaves crackled underfoot as Kicker trotted out of the gate, mounted proudly on Grindleshire stable's latest acquisition. She brushed her hand over a stone pillar as she passed, and was able to reach higher than she ever had before. Kicker rubbed the neck of the tall grey gelding. "Made this ride dozens of times over the last year, Banner, but I ain't ne'er gone home in such style." Just outside the gate, Kicker had to pull Banner hard to one side to avoid a buggy, loaded with students returning from a day in the city. She saw glances of irritation and disdain shot in her direction, but Kicker had become immune to those over the months. "Faces change, but the arrogance don't. Ain't gonna ruin my day, 'tis sure." On the way to the Stuart home, Kicker enjoyed the looks her mount received. She knew she was riding a special horse. By the expression on her brother's face as he waited at the fence line for her, he knew the same. Adam pushed his hat back on his forehead and whistled appreciatively.
"Damn, Kicker! That's one fine-looking animal. Tell me you didn't steal him."
Kicker cantered up to her brother, a wide grin on her face and a chest puffed up with pride. "Ain't he something? The Academy just got him. His name's Banner, and old Thomas said I could borrow him for my half-day." She came to a stop in front of Adam and slid off Banner's back. "He stands near 18 hands." Adam winked at her.
"So how'd you get up on him, little sister? Jump off a stump?"
Kicker stuck her tongue out at her brother. "You're just jealous, 'cause all you got to ride is that old nag." She jerked a thumb at the family mare, grazing placidly in the nearby paddock. Adam shrugged.
"Maybe, but it ain't like you own this one anyway."
Kicker stroked Banner's neck. "No, but someday I'll own one e'en finer."
"Ah, By then there won't be anything but those newfangled motor cars about. That's what I'm going to have one day."
Kicker frowned at Adam. Favourite brother and surrogate parent or not, such blasphemy regarding a beloved horses would not be tolerated. But before she could protest, Adam hooked her around the neck in a hug. Kicker punched him lightly in the ribs, and their customary greeting ritual was complete. "Can you get away for a bit, Adam?"
"Could be, if we was to go fishing and bring Ma something back."
Kicker turned Banner out to graze with the mare. The siblings grabbed fishing poles from the woodshed and headed down to the creek in their favourite hole. Kicker caught 2 and Adam 1 by the time their conversation picked up again.
"Looks like you grew some, Kicker."
"You just saw me last month. Sad's been well over a year since I left for Grindleshire. Wasn't going to stay that scrawny forever." Adam cast a glance his sister's way.
"It's been that long, has it? I expect you think you're all growed up now."
He pointed down the bank about 20 feet to a thick copse of trees and bushes that overhung the river.
"Remember the day I found you there?"
"'Tis where you always found me."
"Ah, but I'm talking about the day you ran from Ma."
"Wasn't running from Ma. I was running from Preacher Dodd's sons." Kicker shook her head in disgust at the memory. Though it had led to her current enviable living arrangement, at the time it seemed like the end of the world. Adam chuckled softly.
"If Ma'd had her way, you'd have been married right alongside June and Edna last summer."
Kicker shuddered at the memory of that horrible day. Mary Stuart had taken note of her 7th daughter, and realized that Kicker more closely resembled her brothers than her sisters. She wore her brothers' hand-me-downs, disdaining, from the moment she could talk, the dresses that her older sisters wore. The patched trousers were more appropriate for the work Kicker did for her father, so Mary rarely protested. However, the new cleric in town had 3 sons of marriageable age. Kicker was only 14, but Mary had been given in marriage when she was 15, and decided that her unconventional daughter was old enough to wed. Along with her 3 unmarried older sisters, Kicker was to be included in the display of available females when the cleric dutifully came to call. To that end, Mary ordered all the girls into their best clothes and spent a whole morning washing and dressing hair. When it came to Kicker, however, Mary met full-scale rebellion. The girl flatly refused to don one of her sister's dresses for the occasion. When her mother grabbed her arm and tried to force her up the stairs to get into a frock, Kicker broke free and tore out of the house. Adam had been sent to find her, and without hesitation headed straight for her usual hiding place. He'd found her down by the creek, nestled amongst the bushes that overhung the slow-moving water. When he'd squirmed in next to Kicker, folding his 6-foot frame into the small space with difficulty, she'd scowled at him. "Don't e'en ask. I don't care what Ma wants. I ain't putting on a dress for anyone, let alone Preacher Dodd's peg-ass sons."
"I know, Kicker, and I ain't here to ask you to go back. I just thought you might want to talk, is all."
Kicker's expression had softened and became more puzzled than fierce. "Why'd she do it? I told her over and over that I ain't e'er getting married. Why don't she believe me?" Adam had wrapped his arm around Kicker's thin shoulders and given her a warm hug.
"Because she don't really know you, is why. You gotta understand. Ma truly does think that the best she can do for all of us is see us married off and starting families of our own."
"Damned if I'm e'er going to marry. No way I'm birthing every year until I drop dead."
"Ain't just not wanting babies, eh?"
She'd stared uncomfortably at her stained, too large boots, and then glanced up shyly. "Not really. I just don't get it, Adam. What the fuss is about, I mean. Even when I was in school, I thought the girls were acting so silly, fawning over the boys. Hell, I could be any of them gits in wrestling and knife toss. They weren't no big deal.
You'll understand someday, little sister. Someone will come along and steal your heart clean away. 'Cause you know, there's a little bit more to life than wrestling and knife throwing, sweetie.
Course I know that. There's horses, too.
To this day, Kicker did not understand why Adam had laughed so hard he almost fell into the creek. However, since he had delivered on his subsequent promise to make things better, she did not care that she had been the butt of his merriment. As always, when it came to his favourite sibling, Adam went one step further than convincing their mother that Kicker was a poor candidate for matrimony. Within weeks, he procured for his sister the position as stable hand at Grindleshire's. In the 16 months since, Kicker had been content. She had her own small room, a luxury she'd never before experienced, work that she enjoyed, and the congenial company of a boss she respected, and who had come to respect her. She would never grow wealthy on the wages she earned, but she had enough, and she was content. Adam's voice recalled Kicker's attention to her present.
Looks to me like you've put on a pound or two. They must be feeding you right over there.
Aye, cook likes me fine. I bring her fish as a regular thing. She's real partial to fresh trout, and she'll fix it up special for us after t'others eat. Always saves me the biggest piece of pie, too. Adam smiled affectionately at her.
I'm glad. You found a home.
Aye, I did. Thanks to you. They fished in silence for a while. Adam?
Aye?
Old Thomas said something t'other day.
Aye?
He said the last stable hand were in a scandal, and 'tis why I got his job.
'Tis true.
There was distinct unease in Adam's voice, and Kicker glanced up. She was surprised to see her brother shift uncomfortably. It piqued her curiosity further. So, what was't?
What?
Kicker frowned. It wasn't like Adam to avoid his subject. What was a scandal? What did the last stable hand do 'twas so bad? Adam sighed deeply, and for a moment Kicker did not think he would answer.
He, well, he despoiled a couple of the students. When 'twas found they was in a family way, he disappeared. After that, didn't take a lot of convincing to get old Thomas to hire you, even if you was a girl.
Huh. Kicker absorbed the new information. Makes sense. He won't e'er have to worry about nothing like that with me. There was a strangled sound from Adam, but when Kicker glanced at him, he shook his head.
No, I guess he won't.
With an audible sigh, her brother changed the subject.
I got something to tell you.
Aye?
Aye. Me and Annie, we're getting married next month.
Kicker nodded slowly. She'd been expecting it. Adam had courted Annie Doyle for almost a year. Still, it would be hard losing him to another.
Don't mean you're losing me. Just means you're gonna gain another sister.
Like 9 ain't enough. Kicker sternly set aside her jealousy. Annie's nice. I'm glad for you, Adam. You'll be a good husband.
And someday, you'll be aunt to our children.
Aye, 'tis so. But as always, when Kicker considered the traditional ways of marriage, her stomach got queasy. Might be all right for Adam, but it ain't ne'er gonna be for me.
Morning, Kicker.
Morning, Cook. The wood bin was low, so I filled it. It was getting cooler in the mornings as fall approached, and Kicker knew that bigger fires helped relieve the ache in Cook's aging bones. The rotund sovereign of Grindleshire's kitchen beamed at Kicker.
You're a good 'un, girl. I can always depend on you. Wished my lazy girls would take a lesson. I just ain't able to keep after them like I used to, back when you first came to us.
Kicker winked at Cook and crammed the remainder of her breakfast into her mouth.
If I can get away tonight, I'll bring you some fresh fish, too.
Cook's eyes sparkled with anticipation. The two of them would dine well this evening, though they generally did, fresh fish or not. Kicker left the kitchen whistling as she headed for the stables. She had worked at Grindleshire's for more than 6 years. Over time, she'd slowly assumed the heaviest of old Thomas's workload, though it had been almost 2 years before she was allowed to shoe the horses independently. It was now generally accepted around the school that when old Thomas retired, Kicker would take his place as stablemaster. Under warm, sunny skies, Kicker could not think of one thing wrong with her world.
Life is good, eh?
Reaching the stables, she laughed aloud from sheer pleasure and drew an indulgent smile from old Thomas. Hours later, Kicker had just finished shoeing the elderly bay that the Grindleshires favoured for their excursions to the finer homes in the county, when old Thomas beckoned her aside.
Need you to pick up the new teacher coming in on the afternoon train.
Kicker nodded. She was often sent to make pickups at the station as another new school year approached, and she had expected this particular assignment. Kitchen's scuttlebutt had indicated someone new was coming in to replace a teacher who resigned her post to get married. Old Thomas frowned as he regarded her.
And try and clean up a bit before you go. We don't want the woman thinking we're a bunch of clods just because we're out of spitting distance of civilization.
Unused to giving any thought to her appearance, Kicker glanced down at her dusty clothes.
You'd think I was going to pick up the Queen herself.
With a shrug, Kicker stepped up to the trough to rinse off the evidence of her duties. She barely got her hands wet before old Thomas growled at her.
Go use some soap and put on a clean shirt.
Instantly resentful of the unknown woman who was responsible for her having to bathe when it was not even Saturday night, Kicker stomped into the stable, muttering under her breath.
"'Twould be a damned shame to offend Miss High and Mighty now, eh?"
Kicker ignored the sleepy-eyed chestnut that nuzzled her as she strode past the mare's stall.
God forbid she breathe in a little sweat and all shit.
Kicker paused to kick her boots against the post outside her door, and was forced to admit that there was more than a little manure clinging to them. She sighed, entered her room, and stripped off her footwear and clothes. She gave her boots a cursory brushing out the window, and then poured water from the chip pitcher into the tin basin. Kicker seized the sliver of soap and made hasty work of her ablutions. She shivered as she dried herself on the threadbare towel, and dragged a brush through short, riotous curls. The small cracked mirror, a discard from one of the students, reflected a young woman who was only several inches taller than the girl who had fled her mother's ill-advised designs. Small-breasted and deeply tanned from long hours in the sun, visitors to the academy often mistook Kicker for a youth. She never bothered to correct anyone's assumptions. Still as wiry as she had ever been, Kicker's sinewy arms and leanly muscled back bespoke the manual labour that filled her days. Kicker turned away with her customary disregard for the mirror's image, and sought out her Sunday shirt and trousers. Mr. Grindleshire's rules insisted that everyone, from the lowliest stable hand to the headmistress, attend Sunday services in the school chapel. She had learned early to keep one of her 3 changes of clothing in respectable condition. Kicker dressed quickly and headed outside to find that old Thomas had already harnessed the chestnut to the school's carriage. The bold maroon lettering on the side identified the small buggy as Grindleshire Academy's. As Kicker sprang lightly to the seat and took up the reins, old Thomas laid a hand on the buggy's edge.
"Train'll be in at 3, if 'tis on time. The teacher's name is Miss Madelyn Bristow, and she'll likely have a trunk or 2.
Take her straight up to the school to see Mrs. Sheridan, and then put her things in her room. Got all that?"
He did not offer written instructions, as Kicker's literacy skills were severely lacking, and old Thomas's were non-existent, but they traded nods of perfect understanding. "Aye, see you in a couple hours." Kicker enjoyed the drive into town along the quiet country lanes. It was part of the comforting rhythms of her life, a familiar sight now to those she passed on the road and in the fields. Many greeted her cheerfully. She quickly forgot her bathing-inspired pique in the pleasure of the summer afternoon, as her earlier sense of well-being returned. Kicker arrived at the station and was informed that the train was running late, so she settled back to wait, musing idly on the new teacher. In her experience, Grindleshire attracted two types of teachers. Some were hidebound spinsters, who had taught so long that they could do it with their eyes and minds shut. Others were young women, barely out of school themselves, who would stay in the profession only until the first proposal of marriage came their way. When the train pulled in, Kicker eyed the descending passengers and looked for a woman who had "teacher" stamped all over her. She readily disregarded the matrons returning from London and the young mothers shepherding their noisy broods. Much to Kicker's surprise, when Miss Madelyn Bristow stepped down onto the platform, she did not fit either Grindleshire stereotype. The woman looked to be in her mid to late 20s, neatly dressed in a pale blue shirtwaist and ankle-length navy blue skirt, which was gathered at a slim waist with a thin black belt. Beneath a wide-brimmed hat, copper-coloured hair was pulled back in a twist, and bright, inquisitive green eyes assessed her surroundings. Before Kicker could approach, the woman spotted her and walked quickly toward the carriage. Kicker jumped down from the seat to greet the new teacher, noting that the other woman had 3 to 4 inches on her in height. "Miss Bristow?" "Yes, you're from the Academy." It was not so much a question as a statement of fact, but Kicker nodded. "Ah, miss. Do you have a trunk, miss?" The teacher gestured over her shoulder, where Kicker could see a porter hauling a large chest toward the carriage. She hastened to help him, and between them, they swung the trunk up on the back of the carriage. After tying it down, Kicker rushed to assist the teacher into the buggy. She was surprised when Miss Bristow insisted on riding up front with her, rather than in the more comfortable passenger seat behind. As Kicker guided the horse away from the station and onto the road that led out of town, she stole a sideways glance at her passenger. This was no shy, awkward neophyte, nor a rigid, humourless old maid. At a loss as how to categorize the new teacher, Kicker maintained her silence, while Miss Bristow took in her surroundings with evident interest. She was startled when the other woman finally addressed her. "You have the advantage of me, my dear. What is your name?" "Kicker Stuart, miss." She could feel the teacher's stare boring into her, and felt herself colour under the intense scrutiny. But Kicker kept her eyes firmly on the road. "Kicker, is it?" "Ah, miss." "That is very unusual." The words were not critical, only curious. Rather than taking refuge in her usual reticence, Kicker felt compelled to explain. "My brother Adam named me, miss. Guess Ma thought it fit me good. Ne'er called me anything else since the day I were born." "I see. So, Miss Kicker Stuart, tell me about the Grindleshire Academy for young ladies." It did not exactly feel like an order, but Miss Bristow's expectant gaze and firm voice made it apparent she was confident of a full and informative answer. "Bet she don't have no discipline problems in her classroom." With a small grin at the thought, Kicker gave a half shrug. "Not too sure what to tell you, miss. I don't stray too far from the stables most days. I can tell you that Mrs. Sheridan, the headmistress, is a fair hand, so long as you don't cross her. She's really the boss, even though Mr. Grindleshire owns the place. You gotta duck when Mrs. Sheridan and Mrs. Grindleshire get to arguing, 'cause they can shake the tiles off in the roof and you don't want to get betwixt them. I can tell you the cook ain't got no patience if you're late for meals, and she won't be saving you anything either. And I can tell you that Pasta Hope...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?